Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. We're just going to give everyone a few minutes to get into the room, so we'll get started in about 2 minutes. All right, we seem to have a slowing tide of attendees coming in, so we'll get started. Welcome to today's webinar. Jen, do you want to go to the intro slide?
You're not seeing the intro slide?
Or the next slide, I apologize. Okay. Great, so welcome to the Empire Archival Discovery Cooperative webinar. We're really excited to have you here. My name is Anastasia Matiku. I'm the program manager for DHPSNY, and I'll just be here in the background helping keeping things move along. For those of you who may not be familiar with DHPSNY, we are fully known as the Documentary Heritage and Preservation Services for New York program. We are a program of the New York State Library and the New York State Archives with services provided by the Conservation Center for Art and Historic Artifacts. In addition to today's webinar, we offer a number of other free services to organizations with collections in New York State, including our planning and assessment services and our online courses, and hopefully soon workshops. So I am going to pass it off to our wonderful speaker today, Jennifer Palmentiero from the Southeastern New York Library Resource Council, where she is the Digital Services Manager. I'll be in the background keeping an eye on the chat. If you have any questions that pop up, please feel free to drop them in and I'll keep track.
Thank you, Anastasia. And I also want to thank DHPSNY for asking me to present today. And thank you all for attending. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to introduce you to the Empire Archival Discovery Cooperative, or EmpireADC, as we like to call it. Again, I am Jen Palmentiero. I'm the Digital Services Manager at the Southeastern New York Library Resources Council. Southeastern is one of 9 regional systems that make up the Empire State Library Network. I support members in our region with digitization projects, and I am also part of the EmpireADC leadership team. So I have about 4 slides just to kind of set the stage for really some show and tell. So after I get through kind of the introductory information on the slides, I'm going to go live on the web and give you a tour of the technology that runs this service. We'll have time for Q&A at the end. And like Anastasia said, if you have questions as I'm presenting, just please put them in the chat and we will address them when I'm finished presenting. Okay, so first, what is EmpireADC? It is a finding aid aggregation service for New York's repositories. Contribution is open to any institution in New York that holds archival, historical, or special collections and wants to make those collections more discoverable. And by finding aids, we're talking about descriptions of those collections. We're not hosting any digital representations of collection items at EmpireADC, but rather information about the collection. So information about the creation and the creators, the size of the collection, dates, languages, topics, and formats of the materials in the collection. And some of the finding aids provide information about what's actually in the boxes or the drawers or the folders, and some don't, and that's fine. But the finding aid has all the information that researchers need to know if a collection meets their needs. So EmpireADC is administered by the Empire State Library Network. So it's a statewide project, but the service is administered regionally. There's somebody at each of the 9 councils to help organizations in their region get onboarded and trained and contribute to the site. So a little bit more about that in a minute. I think it's important to mention that it is a standards-based project. So the finding aids in the system adhere to these two standards. One is encoded archival description, or EAD, and the other is describing archives a content standard, or DAX. We love acronyms. So you do not need to know anything about EAD to participate in this service, but I just think it's important for people to know that it is kind of running underneath everything. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that and look at what EAD looks like, just so you can kind of understand how it makes the system work. But again, you need to know nothing about it to participate, so don't panic. And just a little bit more about what EAD is. It's a way to kind of put our finding aid information into buckets that then computers can understand what that data is, right? And we'll look at it in a minute. And then DAX is your cataloging rules. So those are your description rules. It gives us information about how to enter the information, how to format the information into those buckets. But again, don't panic if this means nothing to you. We're going to look a little bit more at some of this in a minute. So there are two ways to contribute finding aids to the system. And the main reason we're here today is to show you our creation tool. So EmpireADC has a web form that you can fill out with information about your collection, and it creates the EAD for you. So again, no knowledge of EAD is required, but there are institutions out there who can produce EAD encoded finding aids, and we can take those as well. So any institution that can create those kinds of files at their institution, they can give us those files and we'll put them in the system. But again, the form tool is really why we're here today. DHPSNY asked me to do this because the form tool is password protected. So they wanted me to provide an overview of it so people knew how it worked and how to use it before they decided if they wanted to join. Okay, so a little bit more about kind of the regional service around this. Again, the Empire State Library Network is made up of 9 regional councils. We have the whole state covered, and every council has a support person for this project. And these are the wonderful people who I work with to administer the service around the state. All right, so now I'm going to end this PowerPoint. I'm going to go live on the public facing website first, and then we'll take a look at the form tool. Let me end the slideshow. Okay, so this is the public facing website. So this is where people can discover the finding aids wherever they are, and it's very Googleable. So if they're searching on Google, or if they happen to know the site exists, they can come here, and this is where they search and they browse finding aids. And I just want to start here to show you what some finding aids look like, and because that'll help contextualize some of the things I'm going to show you at the back end. Okay. And this is one piece of software. So there's a piece of software that powers all of this, and then the software that hosts the form tool is completely separate. So that's just important to know, but I'm going to show you both. So the first thing we'll do is we're just going to look at our repositories list. So if you browse repositories, this is a list of currently all the institutions that have finding aids in the system. And I'm going to show you a couple finding aids. So we're going to scroll down and we're going to look at Hudson River Maritime Museum. I'm going to click on their link. So every institution that contributes kind of gets a landing page that looks something like this, with their logo and their contact information, a link to their homepage, and a little description of their repository. And from this page, just this institution's finding aids can be searched with this search box. Okay. So that is something everybody gets. So you would get your own URL, and this is a page you could link to from your website to get people just to your finding aids. All right, we're just going to look at one real quick. All right, so I like to show this one because it's a very brief, simple record. And this is really all that is required to participate in EmpireADC, is a record that is as brief as this. You don't have to say what's in the boxes. You just got to give us some information kind of at the higher level collection level. But this one does have, it's a small collection of just 44 technical drawings, and Hudson River Maritime Museum did provide a list of those drawings. So if you click on the contents tab, you can see the list, and all of this information is searchable. Okay, so the collection level information and this information is all searchable through the search boxes. Every finding aid also has an access tab, and that's where users can find out who owns it and how to get to the institution. They have contact information, a link to that institution's website, and a little bit of information about how to use the collection. All right, so I am going to go back. I'm going to show you another one. Going to scroll up. We're going to look at Columbia University, and this is a very large collection. And the reason I wanted to show you this is, the one we just looked at had just kind of a flat list of 44 items. This contents list, if you click on it, this one is hierarchical. This is a huge collection. And we can support this level of hierarchy within a container list or an inventory as well. So that's why I wanted to show it. And these plus signs mean there's more information nested under here. So if I click this plus sign here, here are subseries within this series of negatives, and you'll see there's a lot going on here. These numbers indicate how many then kind of components are listed under this subseries. Just for the sake of time, I'll click on one that doesn't have a whole lot. So we'll look at these color slides. Okay, and then here are the slides listed. Now, again, this is not required. You do not have to share a container list or an inventory to create an EmpireADC compliant finding aid. That very first record I showed you from Hudson River Maritime Museum without a container list is perfectly acceptable. But again, if you do have this kind of information you want to share, then it is all searchable. And we're going to look at a search in just a minute. This is where I want to show you what EAD looks like, and I don't want you to panic, but we are going to look at the EAD for this particular finding aid real quick. I'm hoping everyone can still see that. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So this is what the EAD does. And again, you don't need to know this, but I want to show you something here because it marks up it's not displaying everything. Okay, so first technical glitch. But this is kind of, let me try this again. Maybe the universe doesn't want me to show you the EAD, and that's okay too. But what I wanted to get to is, see, it's marked up. So here we've said this is a language, right? So this collection's in English, and this is a language. This is how big the collection is. So it's just a way to kind of tell machines how to understand the data. But again, you don't need to know it. So I'm just going to close out of this. Now, okay, so we're back here at this finding aid. And I want to show you one more. And I want you to just keep in mind, because when we get to the back end, it's going to be important to understand the difference between a container list or inventory that shows up right here under the contents tab and another way that we can support that information within the system. So again, I'm going to go back and I'm going to show you one from the Albany Institute of History and Art. Okay, and we'll just look at this one. So another way you can share that information is to attach a PDF to this collection level record. So here's all the collection level information. And then down here, we get this list, this button for a container list. So that's another way to tell people what's in the boxes. Okay. So this is actually a full finding aid with all the information, and then here's the container list. But one thing to know is that this information in this PDF document is not searchable through the search boxes on the website. So a user could download this and they could do a search within the PDF to find what they want, but using the search boxes here, information in these attached files is not searchable. The other container lists I just showed you that present right on the web page, those are. Okay, so let's take a look real quick. Well, while we're here, let me go back. to this page. So still at Albany Institute of History and Art, this is their landing page, and there's always just about 10 finding aids that display here. If you click view all of our collections, then you get everything within the Albany Institute of History and Art. And anytime you are browsing by institution, or if you do a search, you get these filters over on the left-hand side. So in this case, we could then narrow down this collection by format. Okay, and this is what that EAD allows to happen. If we don't tell machines that this is a format, then we can't do this level of access. So that's why I like to show the EAD and then kind of show how it applies to the front end and how users can work with the data. Okay. All right, so I am going to go back to the homepage real quick, and we're just going to do a very general search across all of the collections. I'm going to search for Civil War, because a lot of people have Civil War items in their collections. And again, facets or filters over here, I can see which repositories have the most Civil War stuff over here. I could narrow down my results that way. But I wanted to kind of show you a little bit about how the granular searching works if you do have a container list or inventory that displays right online. So here at the top of my results, these are actually collection level records. I hover over this icon, it tells me it's a collection. As I scroll down, okay, these are, this is actually like a file. This is a described within a larger finding aid. So if I were to click on this entry, okay, it takes me right into the container list. You might not be able to see the highlighting so well here, but this is highlighted. Different browsers, it'll show up a little more. And then up here, I can see where this file is nested within the collection. So this is a collection from Syracuse University. It's in this collection and it's in correspondence. And then here's the Civil War materials within here. Now, every kind of level within a container list or inventory that displays online has its own URL. So as a researcher, I could start bookmarking these URLs, and then I can come back to it and it'll take me right here to kind of my point of interest within the collection. So that is all I want to show about kind of how the system works. It is freely available online, EmpireADC.org, and you can go search and browse and see how the site works. Now, before we leave the public site and go to the backend tool, because that's really what we're here today for, I want to point you to the participate section on the website, because this is where you'll find more information about how to join and contribute finding aids. Right off the participate page, here's all the regional liaisons to help you. You can email them with any questions you might have about the service. We do have an application form. So if you want to join, then you're going to fill that form out. We do have fees. So I want to just point you to those real quickly. The 9 councils that make up the Empire State Library Network, we are membership organizations, but this service does not require council membership. So you do not have to be a direct member of your regional council to participate in EmpireADC. It is open to any repository. But we do have some fees associated with it, and they are organized by the size of your institution and then also by the type of institution. So to understand like where your fee category is, the first thing you want to do is what type of institution you are, and then you use this criteria to determine your tier. There are 2 fees. There is a setup fee one time when you start, and then there are annual fees. If you are a member of your local regional council, there is a 20% discount on your annual fee. And I also just want to point out, okay, so that's how that works, okay? But you can come here and read. We have a little FAQ and all kinds of information. But again, reach out to your liaison if you have any questions. So now I'm going to leave the front end and I'm going to go to the back end tool and show you the form. I'm going to spend about 20-25 minutes there to give you an overview of it, and then we'll have time for Q&A. So like I said, it is a completely different piece of software, the back end tool, than this front end tool, but you can get to it from here. So I'm at the home page of the public website, but I can click on contributor login. And then I'm going to log in. So it is password protected. When you join, we set you up with an account and we give you, hold on, a username and password, and then you can access the system. But I do want to let you know that you can get to our documentation without having a password. That is also linked in the footer of the EmpireADC homepage. So if that, we have video tutorials. So because what I'm going to show you right now is not a full demo. If you join, you get a full training with me and your council liaison. It takes about an hour to fully train you on the system, and I don't have that time right now. So this is just an overview. But if you wanted to, you know, show colleagues or, you know, other people in your organization a little bit how it works, you can get to our documentation and you can watch the videos, and that'll give you an understanding of how it works before you join. Okay, so all the work really gets started under this tools menu. So that's what we're going to do now. We are going to actually launch the form, and we are going to create a quick finding aid. All right. So under the tools menu, you have add EmpireADC finding aid, and then you have my content. My content is a page that lists all of your already created finding aids, and that's where you can go get back into them. You can edit them, you can delete them, you can publish them or unpublish them. And we'll look at that in a minute after we've created a finding aid. So I'm going to click this and launch the form tool. Okay, and over on my other machine, I have a Word document with a finding aid. Some of it's real data, some of it's completely made up. So don't look too closely at what I'm going to put into the form. This is more mechanics than kind of intellectual content training. So just know that I will be copying and pasting some data over that you can't see the finding aid, but that's how I'm going to populate this form. Okay, so here's the form. It is divided into multiple pages. Okay, so I am going to walk you through every page of this form. And the first page is information about the finding aid itself, not the collection, but the finding aid. And most of it is pre-populated for you based on your collection profile. So the only thing we need to do here is add a finding aid title. And a finding aid author. Okay, and then you scroll down, all of this is filled out for you. We do ask you to either release your finding aid into the public domain, not the collection it describes, just the data, or assign a Creative Commons license to it. So, and that's all you have to do on page 1. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to page 2. For collection info, and this is the heart of our work. So at EmpireADC, we have kind of decided that these are the elements that you should provide to make a good finding aid so that people understand the collection. So we've kind of put our required fields on this page. Okay, so collection title, I'll start copying and pasting in just a second. Okay, collection ID. If you don't have an internal numbering system in your organization, you can leave this blank. If you do, this is where that goes. Okay, I'm going to leave that blank for now. The language of the material in the collection, it's a drop-down menu. It defaults to English. You can just change that by clicking another language, or if you have multiple languages, you hold down your control key and you can select others. Okay, we do ask for an abstract, just a brief sentence or two that describes the collection. Abstracts show up with brief record results as people are searching and browsing, so it's a good piece of information to have. Okay, and now we're going to get into some of these other fields, which are collapsed, right? So you click the plus sign and it'll launch another element on this page. I want to point you to these little question marks. We have print documentation, which I'll show you in a minute, but throughout the form, we do provide help tools. Okay, and they link to the various parts of the standard. So it links to the description standard. I'll link to it. And this opens DAX and tells you all about how to enter creator information. Okay, So, but let's just run through this form real quick. So the first thing is physical description. This is where we record the size of the collection. So the first thing we do is say whether you can do multiple statements here. So anytime you see a plus sign, you can add another element. Okay. So, but kind of a baseline is to say the whole collection takes up this much space. So we're going to say I'm making up information right now. Okay. Something like that. But you can also say, you know, if you want to say that the whole collection is in 2 boxes, you can say that too. Sometimes for really large collections, we want to kind of get at some of the materials that are in there, or we want to break it down even further. So you could say that part of the collection has, you know, 100 maps, something like that. Okay, so that's how this works. But at the baseline, we like to do this. This is important information for users to just kind of know the size of the collection. Okay. Collection dates. When you expand that, you have the option for 2 date elements. You have inclusive dates, and then you have bulk dates. So your inclusive dates are typically the earliest date of the collection materials and the latest date. Now, if you have a chunk of information, like if most of your materials are really within a smaller range than that, that's what your bulk dates are. So you can say the bulk of my collection is 1800 to 1820. Okay. And just like kind of the size elements, these are all repeatable. Sometimes we have a need to express lots of different kind of date ranges and things within a large collection. So you can do that. But for the sake of time, I'm going to move on. Collection creator. So the first thing you do here is select the type of creator you have. In this case, it's personal. It's a person who created the collection. And if I start typing Josiah Hasbrook's name, it's going to start searching the Library of Congress name authority file. So these are all the names associated with collections and resources at the Library of Congress. It's a lot of names. If your person is not in the Library of Congress authority file, that's okay. Josiah is not, so I can just key it in and off I go. Okay. So creator role is optional, but this is where you can distinguish between a creator, a collector, a donor of a collection. I'm going to go ahead and call him creator. Okay. And then this URL, this again searches a Library of Congress vocabulary. There's a lot of these kinds of vocabulary lookups throughout the system. I'm going to show you more in a minute. Okay, so these 4 fields here are just paragraph fields. They're free text fields. So your kind of historical note about the creators of the collection. Here's where I'm going to copy and paste from my finding aid. Okay, each paragraph needs to be in its own box. So I'm going to click the plus sign and add another one. This finding aid actually has about 4 paragraphs, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to do 2. Okay, scope and content. This is information about what's in the collection. Again, I'm going to copy and paste from my finding aid. And same rules apply. Anytime you have free text paragraphs, every paragraph needs to be in its own box. So I click the plus sign, I get another box, and there's my scope and content note. Okay. Access restrictions is information about accessing the collection physically. So in this case, it's available Monday through Friday by appointment with the curator. Okay, and then your use restrictions is more kind of like copyright status and how the collection items can be used. This collection is in the public domain. Okay. And then underneath that is your repository information, which will be pre-populated based on your account profile. So if you have filled in all of these blanks, then you have created an EmpireADC compliant finding aid. Okay, those are the pieces of information we ask for. Okay, and we do ask, I'm going to go to page 3 right now of the form. Okay. So this is where we do our indexing terms. So when we were looking at the Albany Institute of History and Art, and I showed you that format facet where you could narrow down their collection by photographs or correspondence, things like that. These are the terms that end up in those filters. So we ask you to assign at least one, not one in every category, just one. So just one subject heading or just one format, just one location, whatever makes sense. Some people do a lot. So I'm going to show you a little bit how this works because this is where we have some more lookups, that things that kind of autofill for you. So let's look at subjects. And from here, you can look up Library of Congress subject headings right through the form. If you work in a medical library or archive, we have the medical subject headings. You can look up Wikidata, and then every option up here has a local option. So if you have local subjects, local names, you can always get a local option and just key in what you need. Okay, in this case, I am going to show you how the Library of Congress works. So Josiah was a politician. So we'll do politicians. Okay, and then you get the URL for that subject heading from the Library of Congress. Again, if you have multiple subjects, you click the plus sign, you get another entry. Huguenots. He was a Huguenot, so we'll enter that one in. Okay, same rules apply. If I do a geographic location, maybe I want to index this as being about New Paltz, New York, because it is. And again, it's looking up the Library of Congress terms for me. But I do have a local option. So if the location is not in there, I can always do a local option. Okay, and this is kind of how it works all the way down. There's certain lookups with every category, and then there's always a local option. Okay, we'll just do one more. We'll do formats and genres. Again, we'll look up the Library of Congress genre format vocabulary, and we'll assign one of those terms. Okay, so that's how that works. So if you do one thing, put one indexing term on this page, fill in page 2, do the couple things on page 1, then you're done. And you can move on and go ahead and submit your finding aid. But we do have other availability for you to say more information. So I just want to show you what that looks like. So we're going to click on page 4. And it says right there that it is optional. So these are all the other elements that you could add to a finding aid. Again, they're not required by EmpireADC, but they're here for you if you want to add them. So maybe you always include an arrangement note about how the collection was arranged, or an acquisition note about how you acquired the collection, or you want to put in a preferred citation to help users know how to cite the collection. These are all available to you. I'm just going to do one. I'm going to click acquisition. So I want to add an acquisition note. And then I expand that, and it's a paragraph field. And I'm going to copy my little note into the form. Okay. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the inventory page. So again, you do not need to provide an inventory or a container list. You can just do a collection level record. But if you want to, we have options for you. And obviously you do that on the inventory page. So remember when I showed you the front end and the Albany Institute of History and Art had that PDF attached to its collection level record? Here's where you would do that if that's what you had. So that's this option, external file upload. You click choose file. And then you browse through your collection. Through your computer. Here's where I have one saved. Okay, done. And now it'll show up under that button that says container list. Okay, the other option is to create a container list that displays online, whether it's a straight list of items like we saw with Hudson River Maritime Museum, or if it's very hierarchical like we saw with Columbia. You do that by using an inventory template that we provide. So I'm not going to go too much into this, but I am going to show it to you. So we have an Excel version. This happens to be a Google Sheet version. You can download an Excel file, or you can use Google Sheets, whatever is comfortable for you. And in either case, when you open this, you'll see 2 tabs. One is a sample, right? So this is sample data, just to give you a kind of an understanding of how to enter the data. And then you always have a blank template. Again, there are kind of some help tools right in here. It is fully documented in our documentation, which I'll show you in a minute, and then you can just key in your information. I created one already for this collection. This is completely made up data. I'm going to move it over just so you can see it. So this is a very simple little container list for this collection that I'm going to attach. Now, whether you work with an Excel file or in Google Sheets, when you're done, you need to save it as a comma separated value file or a CSV file. So I would just download this as a CSV, and then I would attach that CSV file. Okay, there's a lot more nuances with this. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of how this works. If you were to work with us, we would train you fully on how to do this. So I've already saved this down as a CSV file. So I'm just going to go back to my form, and I'm going to attach that file. Here it is right here, my CSV. Okay. All right. So those are your options for doing, for telling people what's in the boxes if you want to do that. When you're finished, you click Submit Finding Aid. And this is a two-step process. You click the Submit button, and then you click the Save button. Now, if you're ready, if your finding aid is finished and you're ready to publish it to the front end, then you can click this Publish button. And then every night at 4 o'clock, our front end system is designed to come into this system and pull out any newly published finding aids and present them online. It's not automatic. But if you're not ready to publish right now, if you just want to save it to your My Content and come back in and edit it later, you can do that. So you would leave this unchecked and click Save. Okay. So this is the backend display. So I've created this finding aid, and this is what it looks like in the backend system. I showed you what they look like in the public interface. They look very different, but this is like your backend display of your content. If you uploaded files, you can get to your files right here. And then here is my container list that I created, okay, with my information about what's in the boxes. This is the backend display. All right, so real quickly, I'm going to go to my content, because once you save a finding aid, this is where they go. So this is my test account. These are a lot of test collections, and I have quite a lot of them. So once your collections grow and you want to search on something, you can do that. So I want to find collections I have about the Deo family, and here's my Deo family papers. Okay, and from here, I can edit it. So it just launched this finding aid right in the form, and I can make any edits I need. Okay. I can also, let's reset this. So now I'm at all of my finding aids. So if I had a bunch that were unpublished and I was ready to publish them, I check them. And then from up here, I can publish. Okay. So everything is editable. Everything is deletable. You decide when to publish. Things don't go live to the public until you tell them to. So before we get to Q&A, I just want to show you where our documentation lives. So we have some print documentation. So this user's guide really walks you step by step through the form. And then we have a best practices for description guide. So this gives you a little more information about how to fill in the fields. And this is kind of DAX light. So DAX is a pretty robust standard with lots of information. We've kind of pared it down and mostly tied it to our required elements. So we give you a little information about it, and then we give you some examples. So there's documentation to help you, there's people to help you, and tools to help you. So we've got a full package to help you make your finding aids available in the front end system. So that's the show and tell. So we're going to go to Q&A right now. So Anastasia, do I need to get into the chat to see that? Maybe I should.
We haven't had any questions come in just yet.
Okay.
But everyone, please feel free to drop your questions in. I do see a hand getting raised. If you just want to type those questions into the chat, send it to hosts and panelists, and we should be able to access them. while you're all thinking really hard about your questions, I do just want to take a moment to thank Jen for sharing this tool with us. I see some familiar names in the attendees, folks and organizations who we have definitely recommended using this tool to. So it's exciting to see you moving ahead and getting more excited about it.
And I do want to reiterate that if you join, you do get a full training, you know, done via Zoom, obviously, but we sit with you for about an hour and really walk you through everything and answer your questions specific about your needs and your collections and your organization. So this was just a quick overview of the system.
So I see a few hands raised, but I don't know if
Is
any of
there a way
you,
to unmute people?
we can go ahead if you're comfortable.
I
you should
am,
have
but-
power to do that, Jen.
Oh, okay. So let me go to participants, attendees. Okay. I see the hands raised, but I don't know how to unmute them.
Let me see. So Naomi, I think I'll push through to allow you to talk if you want to ask your question. I think you'll just need to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so please bear with me. I have a speech problem. So it actually looks like the chat is disabled. So nobody's able to put a question in there. When I interned at the New York State Archives, I created mark records for the HDI project,
Mhm.
and this kind of looks like a sparklier version of that. I was actually wondering, did this come out of that?
That's a
Or is-
really good question. So I'm going to say no. Like this, I'll tell you a little bit of the history about this project. The idea for this actually came from the archival community itself in the state. There were some archivists around the state who started exploring a statewide repository. Oh, we're going back probably 12 years now. And they did some surveys and engaged with the community. And then they came to the Empire State Library Network for help to build the tech and the service around the need. But we have we know about the HDI and all those records in there. So I'll just leave it at that. I mean, I think there's some hope that someday all of those records will end up in here, but that's probably, you know, that's a pretty big lift, but it's on kind of our radar. So they're not really connected in terms of the work and how they both developed, because the history of the HDI goes back to print days. So the history of those records goes back many decades. So a good question.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I think I fixed the chat. Apologies for that. I think we all know that Zoom does what Zoom wants to do. So it looks like we have several questions coming in. Can you see them all popping up, Jen?
Yes, I can. Can you edit records that have already been made public? Yes, you can. So once you've published them, and it just works just like I showed you, you just open the form, and when you save it, if it's already set to published, then that night at 4 o'clock, the updates will be reflected in the front end. So again, it's not immediate, but it should happen every night. So when you make changes, and you don't need to unpublish to edit, you just edit, save it, and then the edits will show up the next day. So let's see what else. Oh, hi, Luann from the Butterfield Library. Okay, still doing inventory on the collection, but this has been helpful in planning for the finding aids. Okay, May. Well, I'm glad you were here. Any other questions? One thing I should probably do, if I put my email, I'm going to put my email in the chat so you all have it, and you can email me at any time if you have questions as well. I will, while we still have people, I'll let you know that one of our kind of more recent contributors shared with us recently that they're already getting feedback from their research community that they really appreciate the cross collection searching and being able to find materials not just in kind of their flagship institution, but held elsewhere around the state. So that's really one of the powerful things about EmpireADC is bringing our collections together.
Jen, I wonder, while we're waiting to see if there are any other questions, if you could speak a little bit to some of the perceived barriers that smaller organizations have getting into this and kind of how we might help them overcome that. Because I think this is a great and useful tool that everybody should start taking part in. But I know sometimes it's hard to get to that point or feel comfortable.
Sure. So that's where the people we provide to help you, because it can be overwhelming at first, but you get a lot of support from actual humans to get you up and running and who are there for you when you have questions. So that's one thing. Another thing is just remembering that you can start with a very brief record. And again, we'll give you all the support and training you need to enter in that page 2 of the form. So you don't have to do a full inventory to participate. Sometimes you get overwhelmed by how much information you might need. Just a brief record, and then you can add to it as you have the time to discover more about the collection. So that's another thing. And then I had something else on my mind, but it just completely went away. Oh, I know what it was. So a lot of times you might have, you might already have finding aids. So you have Word documents, you have data in other ways, right? So you can just repurpose it. Like we do ask you to fill out page 2 of the form rather than like, we're not just taking PDFs or Word documents without that kind of structured collection level record. But if you have that, if you have Word documents, then the copying and pasting into page 2 of the form doesn't take too long. So repurpose the data you have and then just attach that file to it with all the other information. So those are some of the things right off the top of my head that can kind of make it seem less overwhelming.
And of course, getting to work with you is always great.
Well, thank you.
So I just dropped in a SurveyMonkey link for the evaluation for this as we continue to wrap up some questions and conversations. For those of you attending, please feel free to open it up and tell us what you liked or didn't like, and you'll also get it later in an email.
Yes, and I would welcome any feedback about the presentation itself. It's hard to condense all of this into under an hour. So I know I did kind of gloss over some things, especially with the tool, but I couldn't, take up the whole hour on the tool. I had to give you some context for the service as well. Yeah, I will put my email in the chat again. Here comes my email again. .org. And really don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions. What I'll probably do if you email me directly is I will loop in your regional liaison just so everybody's on the same page with questions that are coming in or your needs. And I want to thank everybody for coming. And
yeah, and I want to thank Jen for this lovely presentation. Feel free to shoot her an email, to reach out to DHPSNY if you have any questions. And I think we're getting all the thank yous, so I think it might be time to wrap.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you.